It's Rob, and we are back with the Plant Manifesto, baby. So today we're going to be helping out Props and Pots. They left me a comment on my carnivorous plants and just pretty much asking what my setup is and what I do to keep them thriving. So this is going to be a things I wish somebody would have told me before getting into Venus flytraps. So here is going to be my Venus flytrap. And one of the first things that I wish somebody would have told me is that this is going to be an outdoors plant. Uh, some people have had some success growing it on their windowsill or growing it indoors, but for me, this is an outdoor plant no matter what, because the way that you have to keep this, it breeds a lot of insects and gnats and things like that. So therefore, for me, the Venus flytrap has to stay outdoors. So talking a little bit more about that setup, the Venus flytrap is going to need a plastic tray. So mine sits in this plastic tray and it sits like this, and then I put it outside into a sunny area. The reason why I said that this has to be outdoors is because if you look at this tray, it's not aesthetically pleasing. There's algae, there's all kinds of gross stuff, but don't get me wrong, algae does not mean that things are going wrong. A lot of the times it means that the environment is happy. So it just is not, it doesn't look nice to the eye. So for me, this guy has to be outdoors. This is going to be one of the main facts. If you get anything from this video, please listen to this. This guy only takes distilled water. So this is only distilled water that is inside of this tray. You cannot use the water from your spigot. You can get distilled water from I go to the dollar store and it ends up being like $1.25, so I get like a couple gallons at a certain time. But yes, this only takes distilled water or rainwater or reverse osmosis water. But for me, the easiest thing to get my hands on is that distilled water. I would say that I fill this up once every 9 to 10 days. The way that you go ahead and go about it is that you fill it up once, and then once it drains, you kind of want to let it dry out, I would say, for 1 to 2 days. You don't want to fill it up with water right away. Letting that drain is going to let the soil kind of like dry out a little bit. It stops to make sure that there's not going to be any root rot or things like that. So I would say let that dry out for 1 to 2 days and you should be good. When it comes down to general facts, the Venus flytrap is going to be based from North Carolina. It's going to be at the forest floor, and because of that, it goes through a lot of seasons. This is a plant that needs to be going through the seasons. It needs to be outdoors once again. So it wants to go through that extreme hot and that extreme cold, and that will actually put this plant into hibernation. So this Venus flytrap is actually just now coming out of hibernation. So when I first got it, it was green and it looked like everything was going well, and then it all started going black all at once. I thought I was unaliving it, but that was just the plant going into hibernation. Once I did more research about it, there are so many people who have this happen to their Venus flytraps and they think that it's gone and that they can't bring it back, so they actually just toss it, and that is the worst thing that you can do. That is something that is necessary, something that your plant has to go through, and if it does not go through that hibernation phase, it can actually unalive itself. So therefore, make sure that you understand that that is a process that the plant has to experience and that you should not be tossing it out. It will come back. These are very hardy plants. Another fact I wish somebody would have told me is that you should not be touching or poking the traps and actually making them close on purpose. Trust me, I get it. It's an urge that you have when you first get a Venus flytrap. It's okay to do it here and there, but those traps only close twice each trap. So therefore, once it opens and then closes and then opens and then closes, it's done. At that point, the leaf is going to, take care of itself. It's going to turn black. It's going to go away, but it only has those 2 times. So you don't want to be wasting the plant's energy when it could be using that to grow, instead of just, because there's a lot of energy that it takes to close that trap. So allow that plant to conserve its energy and use it for the overall growth of the plant. Another fact I wish somebody would have told me is that the Venus flytrap does not need to eat in order to grow. So obviously, when you get something like this and you get a carnivorous plant and you think that it can, digest plants or digest insects to be able to get that growth in your mind, you're like, okay, well, it needs to eat. I have to feed it. The cool thing about this is that as long as I keep this dish filled with that distilled water, this plant still works as a normal plant. It will photosynthesize as a normal plant, so therefore it does not have to be fed. So I would not stress yourself out, because at me at first I was stressing myself out. I'm like, I have to give it something, I have to give it something. And now that I know that as long as you keep that water filled, you're headed in the right direction, that put my mind at ease. It's nice that I have two different plants that I'm able to show you, because this is a perfect example of, although both of these plants look like, they're in two totally different stages, this one's thriving, living its best. At one point, this plant looked like this. So this is a plant that is just now coming out of hibernation. So a lot of those older traps are starting to, die off and pretty much going to start recycling themselves. But you can see, if you look in the middle, that is where the Venus flytrap growth comes from, and there is a lot of growth that is coming out of there. So give it a couple of weeks or so, this amount of growth will pretty much just ended up looking just like this. And at first I thought that this was just one plant, but once again, if you look, there is some growing from out of there and growing from out of there at the same time. So this is two Venus flytraps in this pot, which is what I'm pretty much experiencing so much growth all at once. But both of these guys are headed in the right direction. When it comes down to the medium that my Venus flytraps are in, this is going to be sphagnum moss at the top, and then there's also sphagnum moss at the bottom, with my aerated mix pretty much at the top. The same thing is going to go for here. I just don't have any sphagnum moss topping this because it got a little bit too big too fast. Another thing that I wish somebody would have told me about Venus flytraps is that you can plant them into bigger pots and they will actually root into it. These guys like to be rooted into, quite bigger pots. I could probably double the size of these and these plants would still be fine in those pots. Overall, the Venus flytrap is a super hardy plant. It experiences all those seasons, and like I said, it can look like this and then come back twice as strong. So never give up on it. It's one of those plants that, as long as you're giving it that the distilled water and placing it into the correct sunlight, you should be good to go. To go ahead and wrap it all up, also, if you live in Florida in a sunny area like me, my Venus flytraps are outside. They're out the whole entire year. This year we dropped into the 40s, so it was actually nice. I didn't have to, do anything to try to trigger that hibernation. But say for whatever reason our temperatures were too high, a way that you can kind of mimic that season or that change is actually digging up your Venus flytrap at that point. All of the Venus, the traps themselves would have turned black and have rotted off already. So it will just be this little rhizome. You can actually take that rhizome, wrap it in foil, put it inside your fridge for about a month or two. That will actually allow that plant to get that rest that it needs. After that month or two, you can slowly introduce it back into the outdoors. At that point, you would have stimulated that hibernation that it needs, and it'll come back bushy and nice, and you would have given the plant, that overall rest period that it needs to come back and thrive during the springtime and summertime. So hopefully these tips can help you out. If you have any more questions about any other type of plant types things, that's what I'm here for. Plant advice, plant tips, leave it below.